All right, guys, let's talk some Mavs trade rumors. Let's gather around the water cooler. Let's have a talk. Let's discuss some of our options here, maybe some moves we could make. It's kind of getting to that time of the year, so it's kind of good we start looking ahead and seeing what's out there. Before we start, I will be talking a little bit about Kyrie Irving. I'm a big fan of the idea. So just to be clear, there's two other guys who I run this channel with. These opinions are my own. They don't even really know I'm doing this video. So these are my opinions, not theirs, just in case anyone's wondering. The trade deadline is February 9th, just so everyone is aware. And the only other really important date is that JaVale McGee for our team has a no trade clause up until December 15th. Just so we're aware. So if we're going to trade McGee, has to be December 16th or later. Just so everyone's aware on that. I'm going to pull up Russell Westbrook here. Now, I don't think he's a trade idea anymore. It's a bit in the rearview mirror. I only bring him up because he's a good example of what we're trying to do and some things we could look for in terms of players and, more importantly, contracts. A big part of the NBA, obviously, is trying to move contracts around, as with any professional team, right? You're trying to build a complete roster, and obviously that has to deal with how you structure players' contracts, etc. So at the beginning of the year, the offseason, there was a bit of a rumor going around that we might make a trade for Westbrook. And on the court, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but in terms of contracts, it does. And so I'm just going to use it as an example. And again, I don't know how legitimate those rumors were. I know the Mavs kind of denied that was ever really a thing. But, I don't really believe that because, you got to figure the Mavs front office is smart enough to look at these contracts and know that getting Westbrook on a one-year rental and being able to move some of our bad contracts for that would have been a good deal. So just with that being said, he's kind of a good example to look at. He's making $47 million this year, which is way above his playing abilities. This is Davis Bertans. He's the worst contract in the league by far. Hasn't even played a minute yet. Even when he was healthy, he played maybe 5-10 minutes tops. He's a shooter, nothing more. I guess he brings some size to the team, but again, $16-17 million a year, not worth it, not even close. We need to move him almost at any cost. He has an early termination of $16 million a year, which, again, if you're going to pay $16 million, then you might as well just keep him unless you have something else planned to do after that, which I'm not sure what that would be. That's 2 years away, so who knows what we could do with that. Or at least, Cuban will have to pony up $16 million, $5 million of which is guaranteed. So with that being said, let's just call it $17 million a year average. We have Tim Hardaway Jr. again coming off the injury. He's a good shooter. He's been a little rusty so far, which is expected. Not that I'm complaining. But in terms of getting paid $19.5, $18 million, and a little over $16 million for the next 2 years after this year, Hardaway Jr. is probably not playing or living up to that contract. So moving him is definitely an option. Even if he did get his rhythm back, and let's say he's averaging 18, 20 points a game, his defense is still average. And in terms of what he brings to the offense, he's a three-point shooter. I mean, that's what he is. And although I know Bullock and Finney-Smith have not exactly been hitting the threes like we would hope they would, I think that will come around. I think as the year goes on, that will improve. So we have guys on offense who, in my opinion, can do what Hardaway does in a way. Hardaway can probably create his shot a little more, probably has a little bit of a better mid-range, and can slightly probably get to the hole a little better than those two guys. But defensively speaking, Bullock and Finney-Smith bring much more to the table. Hardaway Jr. is probably an average defender at best, so he's probably getting paid a little too much. So I think he's a good trade bait. I think there'd be probably some teams interested in him. I was going to bring up Maxey. I think they got Maxey's contract on this mixed up with JaVale McGee. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong on that. But Maxey's going to be a free agent at the end of this year. He's making $9 million. Keep that in mind. Dwight Powell is making $11 million this year, and then he's an unrestricted. Again, in terms of the amount of minutes that Powell plays and what he can do, I think $11 million's a little rich, but probably a lot better value or closer to what he's playing than Hardaway Jr. in his contract. Keep Campazzo in mind. I only bring him up because of Kyrie later on being able to we might have to give them a guard in return. So thinking about that, right? The rumor at the beginning of this year was that we would trade essentially some contracts for Westbrook. He's making $47 million a year. We would trade Bertans, which is, let's just call it 16. Hardaway Jr., let's just call it 17. So that's already 33 right off the bat, 33 million. And then if we were to throw Dwight Powell on top, that's essentially 44 million. And then, as you can see here, 47 million. That makes sense, right? We essentially are moving Bertans' contract and Tim Hardaway Jr.'s contract, which expire in another 2 years each, and Powell, which expires this year, so that we can clear essentially $45 to $50 million off the books, which is a lot, right? That's a lot to then go spend in free agency at the end of this year. Which again, we're setting ourselves up, right, to make a move or to re-sign people. We have to re-sign Wood, so that would help. Probably need to re-sign Maxey. I think Maxey probably gives us a little bit of a hometown discount, as well as Powell. I think Powell would too, but you can't guarantee that, right? Exactly how many teams would be interested in them and what would they be willing to pay, I don't know. Probably not close enough, around the end of the year we'll probably get some rumors on that, or at least when the offseason hits, right? We'll get some rumors on that. But exactly what people will be willing to pay for those guys, I don't know. But again, I would have done this if this was a real thing. I think the Mavs front office kind of came out and said this wasn't legitimate. But I think they had to have at least looked at it, right? And I would have done this, in my opinion, merely for the contracts. Again, you get Westbrook on a 1-year rental. I'm not expecting him to put us over the top or anything like that, but we clear a lot of space, and now we can make a lot of moves in the offseason in terms of getting someone like Miles Turner or something like that, who is another guy I'll take a look at here in a second. But going forward, let's remember that with Luka on our team, we have championship aspirations. That is always the goal, right? We should not be trying to play it safe, nor should we be trying to sell the farm to make 1 or 2 moves, right? But I think we should take some risk is where I'm going to eventually go with this. Do we think this team now, as it's constructed, is a championship team? I don't think so. I think we're more of a contender than a pretender, but we're on the outside looking in terms of being a true contender. We're still a move away, I would think, maybe 2 moves depending on how those moves break down. But we're not a true contender yet. So let's keep that in mind. Like, we are going to have to make a move at some point, and whether that's clearing up cap space or trading for a player or two, we're going to have to do something, right? So if you're one of these people who's in the mindset of playing it safe, or that you just want to ride this team out to see if they can get back to the Western Conference Finals, I don't think that's going to do it. I just don't. I think we got a little, I don't want to say lucky, because you win a 7-game series, you win a 7-game series. That's the one thing I like about basketball is, the better team will almost always win in a 7-game series. So we won that series against Phoenix fair and square, but we definitely, I would say, punched above our weight class, which is fine. Of course we'll take it. But, to think that we are going to get back to the Western Conference Finals and have a chance there, and even if we advance, have a chance in the finals with this team, I think is a bit of a stretch. So I think we are going to have to make a move at some point, and getting rid of Bertans' contract is essentially at the center of that. We have to get something in return for that $16-17 million a year we're spending on Bertans. I cannot stand Bertans' contract. It's easily the worst in the league. I mentioned JaVale McGee earlier. He's making about he's making closer to $6 million a year for the next 3 years, including this year. We can't trade him until December 15th, so that's a good thing to keep in mind. While I in some of my film room videos, I did say that I think McGee is a good playoff player. I think he'll present some good opportunities for us in a matchup scenario in the playoffs. I'm more than willing to move him. I'm more than willing to move Bertans, Tim Hardaway Jr., Maxey, and Powell. Those are the guys that, depending on what we can do, and at the key of moving these guys is getting rid of Bertans' contract and kind of Tim Hardaway's contract. Those two contracts, if we have to package those other three guys with them in some form or fashion, I'm for it. I'm all for it. So that's why I brought up Russell Westbrook, just to kind of keep in mind, sometimes it's not necessarily the player that we're going after, but we have some bad contracts that I think we need to move or get rid of that are going to be on the books for the next 2 or 3 years, which, again, we have Luka on our team. Championship aspirations is what we are after. And wasting that $16-17 million a year on Bertans and possibly $18 to $19 million a year on Hardaway Jr. during Luka's prime and some of his good years, I don't think we can afford that. A, I think that will leave a bad taste in Luka's mouth, and B, I think we can do better. I think we can make some moves and do some things to set us up. Maybe we don't get something immediately this year, although I think we can. I'll get to that in a second. But we should be setting ourselves up for next year to make a splash in free agency. So another guy that's brought up a lot is Miles Turner. While I like Miles Turner as a player, good young mobile athletic center, he is probably going to be demanding at least $20 to $25 million in the offseason, and that, along with re-signing Wood, kind of puts you in a bit of a conundrum. Now, I'm more than willing to move. The thing is, I'm just not sure if this deal can work, right? Yes, we could give maybe like Bertans and Tim Hardaway Jr., clear up some cap space for that, but I just don't think Indiana is really interested in taking the pieces that we have for Turner. I think with Bertans on our books, we can almost make any trade work, right? I mean, that's $16 to $17 million we can give to any team and clear up space for ourselves, and we'll take almost anyone in return for that. The issue is, do they want Bertans or Hardaway Jr. or Powell or Klebe or Maxey for Turner? I just don't see them taking the bait on that. I think they'd probably rather just ride out the year with Turner. And why it'd be nice to go after Turner in the offseason, if we can't get rid of Tim Hardaway or Bertans' contract, we're not going to be able to make much, if any, signings in the offseason. Even if we let Maxey and Powell walk, that's only $20 million off the books. And Turner's probably going to be demanding slightly more than that. And, so I just am not sure. As much as I'd like Turner, and he's a good player and everything, I'm just not sure if that's going to work out. And in terms of our front court, I know McGee's getting a lot of flack right now. We have Powell and Maxey to some extent. Our front court is okay. It's not great or maybe even above average, but it's average. And in terms of being such a guard-heavy league, having an average front court is okay, depending on what you have in the back court. And so with Luka, having an average front court with Luka is okay, right? You can live with that. So, just keeping that in mind, I'm not sure taking like McGee and Bertans for Turner, and then who knows what happens to Turner in the offseason, and we have to re-sign Wood, and maybe, hopefully Maxey and Powell give us a little bit of a hometown discount on re-signing. Again, I'm not sure how much buzz those guys have around the league. It's kind of hard to gauge those guys in terms of what other people may want for them. Of course, if someone's looking for a guy who can stretch the floor, Maxey's an interesting. And if you're looking for maybe a backup power forward or center or something like that, Powell may be interesting to you. But, Maxey has the Wurzburg connection with Dirk, and I think he likes playing with Luka. We stuck with Powell through the injury and whatnot. So, hopefully those guys, who knows, right? But hopefully those guys maybe stick around for the same or maybe even a little less. I don't even know. Kind of far away to tell. I don't have a good gauge on that. But let's get to what I really wanted to make this video about. That is Kyrie Irving. I am 100% all in on the Kyrie Irving trade idea. And this deal to me makes too much sense to not do it, right? From a contract perspective, from a on the court need perspective, from a risk to reward perspective, I'm 1,000% on board. I'd make this trade yesterday if I could. So I first want to get to the obvious elephant in the room with Kyrie, and that's the off the court stuff. And again, these are my own opinions, not the other two guys that I do the videos with. But there's a lot of he's getting a lot of flack right now for his off the court opinions. Mainly the social media link he posted or whatever. For me, just being a fan of basketball, I don't care. I just, I made this channel also because I don't want to be political and I want to talk about sports, which I like. And so for me, I just don't care. These guys are professional athletes. People say controversial stuff all the time. And so, like, for me, I guess I just don't care. I just want to talk. I just want to talk sports, and I just want to talk basketball. And I think like I said, these guys are professional athletes. I don't think they should be letting stuff like this bother them in terms of if he were to come to our team. And with that, I want to address, a lot of people say that Kyrie, for whatever reason, well, I know the reasons, but they say that Kyrie's not good in the locker room, or that he's a locker room killer, or a chemistry killer, or something like that. I don't buy that narrative. I think that's a little overblown. I think they're saying that just because he has opinions they don't like. I've never really heard, like former players say they have like a grudge against Kyrie, or that Kyrie disrespected them, or that Kyrie's some vindictive, facetious drama queen, right? I don't get that feeling with Kyrie. I've never heard anything quite like that about him. Does he have weird or out there or controversial opinions? Sure. Like, so he believes in the flat earth theory. I don't care. I don't care, Let's talk ball, And I don't think people should be letting that affect them when they come to play on the court. And so going along with that, I'm going to punch up here a little bit. But this guy from Mavericks Today by Chat Sports, like, he called Kyrie an SOB. I think that's a little out of pocket. To call Kyrie an SOB, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's accurate. I think you're letting your emotions get the best of you with that. Kyrie doesn't come off like that to me, Sure, can you disagree with what he says? Can you be even repulsed by what he says? Sure. But an SOB, I don't get that vibe from Kyrie. I don't get the vibe that he hates other players if they disagree with him, or that he's out spreading rumors about his teammates. I don't get that vibe from Kyrie. And I think it's being a little over the top and out of pocket, as the kids say these days. I'm going to age myself, but I think that's a little much to label Kyrie that. Again, controversial, you want to disagree, you can even be disgusted or repulsed by his opinions, fine. But let's play ball, man. That's just kind of where I'm going to leave that. Kyrie is one other thing. The other thing is like the whole COVID thing. I think it's mainly behind us in terms of restrictions and lockdowns. But if it were to come around again, some other variant or whatever, right? Being in Texas, I think would help. I don't think Texas is going to be one of the last states to put restrictions on or be one of the least restrictive states. So I think again that vibes well with Kyrie's decision. So I think that's a bit of a bonus or a plus we could look in terms of the whole COVID situation. We're nowhere near as strict as somewhere like Brooklyn or New York, so I don't think that would be an issue in Dallas. And then let's talk Cuban a little bit and Kid and Luka. First and foremost, this has to get Luka's blessing. That's number one in this whole thing. It's a total non-starter if Luka says I don't want him or he doesn't think it's a good idea. Then immediately you drop it and you move on. But I don't get that vibe from Luka. I think Luka would say, I think if you were going to present it like I'm about to present it, I think Luka would be down. I think he'd be willing. I think Luka wants to win. I think Luka is desperate for a sidekick right now, and so I think he would be at least able to entertain the idea. And perhaps being from Europe a little bit, he maybe doesn't have the same kind of social political vibes that we do here in America, so maybe he's a little insulated from that and it doesn't quite trigger on his radar as much as it does for the average American. So I think he'd be open to it. I think he'd at least listen. Same thing kind of for Kid. I think Kid would say, Kid can probably ask around the league. I don't think Kyrie is like a chemistry disruptor. I think he comes to play ball, and that's really all you can ask from people. I don't think he's going around the locker room putting up flat earth labels everywhere and being like, if you don't believe in the flat earth, you're part of the problem, right? I don't think he's doing stuff like that. And same with the other stuff, So as long as it's okay by those two, which I think it would be, I don't think that they would just immediately poo-poo the idea. I think that'd be good. Now for Cuban, he'd probably be the biggest key in this because Cuban is part Jewish. I double-checked before I made this video. Cuban is part Jewish. So there's kind of two ways this can go. Cuban might just say what he said was so over, beyond the pale. We can't take him. I'm not going to deal with it. Fine. I don't get that vibe from Cuban on anything when it comes to winning. I think Cuban will always take a look at it honestly and objectively. And I think if we were to do this, Cuban is the perfect man for the job to handle the media. I think the media sort of likes Cuban, and I think if Cuban were to come out, and whether it be wholly true or not, if he were to come out and say, me and Kyrie talked man to man behind closed doors, we're ready for a fresh start, we're here to try and win a ring, that's behind us, I think that would go a long way. Kind of putting up a vanguard there to the media, showing that the team is on the same page, ownership is behind Kyrie, sorry, I keep calling him Curry. And, the fact that Cuban, I think he's at least part Jewish, I think it would go a long way to put a lot of that buzz at ease. And the other part of this is the sooner we do this, if we do it, the better. There's going to be a media blitz. There's going to be a whole media campaign. We're going to be the talk of the town for a month or whatever. The sooner we do this, the better. And I know we can't trade McGee until the 15th, so maybe that's when we pull the trigger on this if he's part of the deal. But the sooner the better. Let's get the media campaign out of the way. Luka, Kid, Cuban, and Kyrie all need to be on the same page, as well as the rest of the organization and the team. And if this goes through and if we're up to it, that needs to be the plan. And Cuban's going to be crucial if we do this. And I think, obviously I don't have any inside sources, but I think Cuban's up for this. I think he's the perfect man for the job if we're able to do it. I wouldn't want anyone else trying to pull this off other than Cuban. Again, I think being in Texas goes a long way. I don't think people so much get all worked up as much as other people about this kind of stuff. Who knows, maybe it'd be a fresh start for Kyrie, that kind of thing. Kind of Cuban comes out and says he has my blessing kind of thing. Or, or at least we've man to man, we've talked. We've decided on, we're here to win a ring, and that's what we're focused on, and we're going to kind of move forward. I think Cuban can pull that off with the media. So that's what I think. If we do this, I think, which we can, obviously. I think they're looking to move Kyrie. I would think, right? You would think after all this they'd be open to trading Kyrie or even cutting him, or who knows. So that's that. That's the off the court aspect of this, right? So that's done. So let's just get that out of the way. Now for the contracts. Again, Kyrie's on a 1-year rental with this. So I mentioned the risk reward. The reward obviously is we become a bona fide contender. The risk is that this completely goes sideways with the media. Kyrie starts posting crazy stuff again. He's, even being more outlandish than before, which I don't think he's going to. I think Kyrie wants to move on as well. So again, even at a worst case scenario, right? We cut him. We send him home, tell him to sit on the couch, and thank you for your service and the opportunity, but we can't do this to our team. We're not going to do this to Luka and the organization. So, we thank you for your services, but it's time for you to go. And that's it, and what have we done? We've cleared a bunch of cap space, like even on the worst case scenario, we've cleared $35-40 million in cap space, essentially by taking a 1-year risk to try and win a ring. So the fact that he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, I think is good. If there was maybe 1 or 2 more years on his contract, I would think a little harder about it. But the fact that he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, that's only a bonus to me. That brings the risk all the way down to a minimum, in my opinion. Now, part of this is I think also a key part of this is we have to trade Bertans. Bertans has to be a part of this. And more than likely we have to give up Bertans, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Dwight Powell. It's probably all 3 of those guys, I would imagine. I would think that's probably the best contract and asset scenario that we could do for this, and also in terms of the Nets, what they would get in return. And we might have to give up Campazzo, which again I don't think anyone's going to be worried about, just in terms of giving them a guard, right? Giving them a guard, maybe they want Maxey, maybe they want McGee, I don't know, but any one of those guys I'm okay with giving up. Any set of those guys, is mainly as long as Bertans is involved. If we can't get rid of Bertans' contract, kind of sours it a little bit for me. And even on the Nets, right, we could even maybe get someone like a Seth Curry or a Patty Mills in return, as another guard to just kind of, maybe just someone to kind of sweeten the deal, considering we're giving them probably a little bit over the amount of Kyrie's contract if we give them 3-4 players. So, it can be done. It can definitely work. The money makes sense. The situation makes sense. It's just a matter, I don't think the Nets are just going to want to punish him for the rest of the year and suspend him for the rest of the year. I think they might actually come off looking bad if they did that. I know they extended his suspension recently. So, let the guy play, let the guy go. If you're going to do that to him, we could use him. They could, they probably feel like it's a circus over there. They might want to get rid of him, even at a discount, by the way, which would even be better for us. If we can get him for a discount and trade those guys, we can go ahead and re-sign Wood or something like that and start to put that nucleus together and sign them for longer term deals. And in terms of on the court, Kyrie fits and plugs every hole we have right now. We need another ball handler. Check. Kyrie's arguably the best handles in the game. He's one of the best point guards in the game. We need someone who can create their own shot. Check. Kyrie's one of the best at that, top 5 or 10 in the league. We need another scorer. Check. He's one of the top 10 in the league at that, top 10 or 15, depending on how you want to put it. He fills every hole and need we have right now. And, you know, the kind of the saying goes, winning cures all. And I think Kyrie coming here is perfect in terms of on the court. It makes all the sense in the world, and he is that piece that we're missing. And while I understand that a lot of teams would take Kyrie and he could bring a lot of things to the floor for them in terms of the things he does, we're talking specifically with the Mavericks about a need that he can fill. So I think he'd get a little bit of a feeling of importance on this team from what we need him to do. And we're talking about championship aspirations. I think this puts us over the top. And I think that also keeps people in line and keeps them focused. I don't think Brooklyn really thinks they have a chance at winning right now. You know, you come to the Mavericks, this is Luka's team. We have all intentions of trying to get back to the Western Conference Finals, and we think you're the man to put us into that final round. You know, that can give a lot of motivation and focus to guys, especially in the NBA. I mean, I feel like some of the times these guys get paid, and if they're not on a good team, they get maybe a little distracted. There's no getting distracted once you come here, and that's the level of competition we're expecting on our team. And it just makes too much sense to not do it, in my opinion. If you don't want to do this simply because of the things Kyrie has said, or you're afraid of the media campaign that's going to follow, I think you're being a little emotional. That's my opinion. You can disagree. That's fine. But again, best case scenario, we win a ring or we get to the finals or back to the Western Conference Finals. That's the ceiling. Winning a ring is definitely, I think we become the favorite in the West if we make this trade. I honestly do, especially with the way the Warriors are struggling, and you know, Clippers are not being the team that they thought they would be with Kawhi coming back. You know, I think we become the favorites, and what he brings in terms of his game to this team is all the things we need so bad right now, so bad. And the biggest risk is that he starts just going off the rails again, and we send him home. You know, and that's it, and it's done. And if the Mavericks cut him or send him home, we take a hit this year. And again, we've freed up cap space. I mean, again, I don't think we are a championship team right now as it is. And I think a big part of us taking that next step is getting rid of some of these contracts and trying to make a move or two next year or maybe even the year after, depending on who's coming up on the market. Even on a worst case scenario, we send them home and we have freed up $35-40 million. That is, I mean, it almost feels like we're carpetbagging the NBA. I mean, or you know, with contracts and the way that would work out, really feels like we're getting away with robbery here, even on a worst case scenario. And I wouldn't want any other owner to try and do this. I think Luka and Kid are able to do this. This makes too much sense to not do it. The only reason you're not going to do it is because you're worried about the media. You know, remove that aspect of it, and I think it's pretty clear this is the perfect move. The key part, again, is Cuban. Cuban being part Jewish gives us a lot of leverage in terms of if these two guys can work it out. And if Cuban can come out and say, you know, we've talked man to man. He has my blessing. We're focused on basketball right now. And then roll the ball out. Let's play. I think it's perfect. Again, the downside, even on the worst case scenario, I would probably still just take that if you told me that's what was going to happen. If you told me Kyrie was going to come here and be a complete ass and almost kind of blow this season in a way, but we get $40 million in cap space, and we're going to make some moves in the offseason, you know, I think the future still looks good on a 1-year risk. And again, if Kyrie had 2 or 3 years on his contract, I'd probably do a hard double think. I might still want to do it, but I wouldn't be as confident as I am right now. Being he is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, pull the trigger, pull it yesterday. And if McGee has to be part of that deal, so we have to wait to the 15th, okay. If the Nets want him for whatever reason, fine. But do this. If I could sit Cuban in a room, I would tell him to do this now and do it immediately. And he needs to call Kyrie and the Nets, and he needs to have a talk with them. Whatever that talk he needs to have from his own belief side or his own personal issues. That's between him and Kyrie and the Nets and our team. But other than that, on paper, on the court, risk reward, it makes all the sense in the world. So I want us to make this trade. I think it's worth it. I don't really see a lot of downside to it. Even on the worst case scenario, it's worth it. So that's my video. That's my idea for Kyrie. I hope we do it. And yep, that's it.